I spent most of my time playing Season: A Letter to the Future thinking, why on earth are there not more games with bicycles in them? There are so many car games to choose from, and we've even got a whole genre for games where you just walk, so why is there no love for bikes? They always just come as an extra option, or some object that you're going to barely spend any time on. Well, Season is an attempt to rectify that, sending you on a journey to chronicle the present before it becomes the past. One photograph and a short bike ride at a time, but is it as pretty to play as it looks? Let's find out. The main driving force behind Season is the vision of an incoming season that is going to wash away the world. This causes our main character Estelle to venture out from her secluded mountain village into the world on a mission to capture it before it disappears. Throughout your journey you will encounter a few souls who refuse to be moved just yet, which gives you the opportunity to learn more about their lives and the world that they inhabit. There are also narratives to be found within the Earth itself, as the past seemingly has a tendency of leaving its mark on the world. The narrative the game takes is generally up to you to piece together. While there are a handful of unavoidable sections of the game that give you smaller pieces of the puzzle, it's largely through your own actions and discoveries that the past and present are unravelled. I unfortunately found I was not that entranced by how the cutscenes and dialogue sections in the game actually played out though. Far too often they felt a bit stilted, empty and kind of disconnected from the tone of what was being discussed. While they don't fill out the bulk of the game, I did find myself largely uninterested in them purely due to their presentation. You're presented with a handful of dialogue choices throughout the game, but it's unclear how much an effect they actually have on your narrative path. One particular decision late in the game seemed quite significant in what it could change, but due to the lack of save states, there was no easy means of getting back to see that potential alternative. Seasons is a short game, so it's not a huge effort to play through it again, but it would have been nice to have that option regardless. The game just kind of arrived at a rather abrupt ending as well, leaving me a bit surprised that it wrapped up that quickly, as I was expecting a lot more from the narrative. It does make sense in the grand scheme of things for it to be such a brief story, but it did leave me feeling a bit shortchanged. Apart from the actual story, the main draw for the game is the cycling. As mentioned, there are very few games that allow you to just ride bicycles, especially those that aim to capture how relaxing it can actually be. So I was immediately interested in how Seasons could showcase this sensation. The reality of it, however, was very much a mixed bag. There was plenty to enjoy, but parts unfortunately felt like they held back from the experience. While it does take you a good half an hour to actually hop on the saddle and start riding your bike, I was immediately struck by how good the experience felt. Scavenger Studio have done an excellent job of having the camera float in the middle distance behind you. This gives you the intimacy needed to feel connected to Estelle as a rider, but also can showcase the space that surrounds her too. It became abundantly clear to me that my favourite moments in the game were just when you were free to ride around, and when you had the ability to just explore where you want at your own designated pace. Cycling as a whole was paired perfectly with the top-class haptic feedback experience on the PlayStation 5 controller. To actually ride your bike, you need to squeeze the triggers. They'll become tighter when you're about to start out your ride or when heading up a hill, perfectly replicating the force you'll need when riding a real bike. While it would have been nice for the entire bike riding experience to have a manual setting with the gears rather than automatic, it still created an enjoyable experience. On the flip side, however, there are a lot of moments that made the action of riding a bike often quite frustrating. Something I noticed very quickly is how eager the game is to force you off your bike if you pause for even a moment. While getting on your bike is just a simple button press, having to repeatedly do so across the course of the game interrupts the flow of riding that I was enjoying a lot. Moreover, adjusting the camera when cycling did not seem to work at all. There are so many times that perfectly suit the classic slow pan to reveal the landscape move, but for some reason making any sort of camera movement sent my vision straight to the floor. As you can imagine, this made it quite challenging to stay on the given path, often sending me into ditches where I was required to stop and reassert myself. The performance was also quite questionable when riding the bike. I experienced fairly frequent frame rate drops, especially in the mid to late game stage. While this was not enough to damage my gameplay, it did remove the feeling of weightlessness from cycling, making it feel rather sluggish instead. I did find plenty to enjoy in the photography aspect of the game. Personally, I loved the square format of photography, as it naturally limits what you can include and therefore leads the photographer to be more purposeful, which fits extremely well with the season's core theme of preservation. Sadly, this does not translate to the actual restrictive aspect ratio of the game. Instead of widescreen 16:9, the game seems to be presented in what is likely 2.39 to 1, which seems to be in an attempt to make it feel more cinematic. However, this often felt just obstructive in the wrong ways, and instead just felt like a simple crop instead of an intentional aesthetic choice. While you are free to capture what you want, your space on each page of your scrapbook where you home your photos is very limited, so you must be very responsive to which images represent each area of the game best. The same is very much true with the field recording elements, as they can take up a fairly significant amount of space on the page as default. You must always be thinking of how you want to show each location, and that often makes for some rather appealing scrapbook pages too. My two biggest gripes with the scrapbook system came from the actual customization and layout of the pages. Firstly, it would have been very helpful to have even just a few more placement options available. The additional items you receive after completing a page are rather repetitive and often uninspired, leaving me to never really touch them at all. Every system in Seasons seems to be summarised by having highs and lows. There'll be something I'm really enjoying, but then simultaneously an annoyance or disruption will creep in and spoil it. That is not to say there's nothing to enjoy within Seasons, and the form of a great game is very clearly there. Aspects like the haptic feedback and the active preservation excel within the game. But there's far too many times where we had to slam on the brakes just as we get the rhythm going, and in such a short game that can be quite disruptive. Overall, Seasons was an enjoyable experience that unfortunately fell a bit short due to some technical issues. This could easily be a great game for a lot of people, and if you can look past these issues, you really are in for a fun time on this journey. Unfortunately, we did feel that the issues took away from the overall experience, but I still feel this is a game that you should absolutely check out. Our written review by Harry is over on our website if you want to check it out, and for those who keep track of scores, we gave Seasons a 6 out of 10. This was reviewed on the PS5 with the code being provided by Scavenger Studio, so a big thank you to them. For more reviews and previews, don't forget to give us a like and a follow. I've been Ollie, and I will catch you next time.